The Federal Coffee Palace is a Melbourne-based coffee shop in the heart of Melbourne, Australia. They specialize in selling coffee, food, and a selection of wine and tea. The current social media platform that the Federal Coffee Palace has is Instagram. On Instagram, they post pictures on a regular basis, which are mostly centered on their food and coffee. Unfortunately, the Federal Coffee Palace lacks social media presence. With only an Instagram account, they are missing out on numerous opportunities to reach a bigger audience. On Instagram, the pictures are of poor quality, there are not that many followers, and there is no brand-to-consumer interaction. Compared to a more popular company owned by the Seven Seas and is located less than a block away, they have a social media presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Their Instagram account has 53.4 thousand followers compared to the Federal Coffee Palace, which has only 481. The first step that the Federal Coffee Palace should do is to choose more social media platforms. According to Kaplan and Heinlein, picking the right platform is essential to the success of a company. The Social Media Census Report states that Facebook is one of the top social media platforms accessed by Australians, so it is crucial for the Federal Coffee Palace to create a Facebook page. Facebook would be a great tool for this company because they can create events like a coffee tasting show, which will attract more coffee consumers who like to explore different types of bean flavors. This would create consumer value by creating a community that coffee goers can interact with one another and discuss what can be improved and what is already good among the selection of roasts the Federal Coffee Palace carries. They can also create an incentive through Facebook by giving consumers a 10% discount if they check into the shop. According to Kaplan and Heinlein, it is important to keep in mind to remain humble when using this platform due to your consumers having more experience on it. Another aspect that the Federal Coffee Palace lacks is only posting photos on Instagram with no interaction with their consumers. Kaplan and Heinlein mentioned that it is important to stay active on social media sites so you can create a relationship with your consumers. To establish a relationship, the Federal Coffee Palace needs to be interesting yet unprofessional, according to Kaplan and Heinlein. In order to be unprofessional, the Federal Coffee Palace can repost their consumers' pictures onto their Instagram and Facebook page, where they can also comment on other posts to engage in a conversation with their consumers. They can also post what's the new trend in the coffee world to be interesting. For example, they can introduce the Nitro Cold Brew, which would allow their consumers to try the newest trends. This would create consumer value by allowing the consumer to have the first access to a new trend within the coffee industry, along with feeling connected with the company by the company using their content. Word of mouth is also an important factor that the Federal Coffee Palace should keep in mind. The Social Media Census Report states that roughly 40% of Australians look at reviews for restaurants or bars, so it is critical for the Federal Coffee Palace to establish a relationship with their consumers in order to get positive reviews. Seth Godin mentions that word of mouth is huge among consumers, so the more word of mouth reviews from consumers, the more consumers you can create. The key to having a beneficial word of mouth is addressed through Kaplan and Heinlein's theories by being honest. You do not want to create a false image because that could damage the company's reputation and values. Therefore, it is important to be honest about the products and services that you are offering in order to get a great word of mouth review. This adds value to the consumer because the reviews given would be accurate, allowing the consumer to trust the company. To summarize the information from above, the Federal Coffee Palace is suffering from having a limited social media presence. With only an Instagram, it is more difficult for them to attract new consumers. The Census Social Media Report of 2017 has mentioned that Facebook is still the #1 platform that Australians interact with, so it is critical for the Federal Coffee Palace to create a profile. The best way for the Federal Coffee Palace to grab more consumers is through Kaplan and Heinlein's theories. The most predominant for this case is the 5 points about being social. The Federal Coffee Palace needs to be active, interesting, humble, unprofessional, and honest. By using these 5 attributes, the Federal Coffee Palace will be able to engage with their consumers, allowing them to create a relationship. Once this relationship is established, a word-of-mouth approach would benefit the Federal Coffee Palace due to consumers appreciating the service and products produced. So our advice for the Federal Coffee Palace is to first get a Facebook page. It is the most widely used platform amongst Australians, so it is important to get one. Second, they should create events on Facebook in order to engage with their consumers. Then they need to be more active on their social media by posting not only photos more often, but using the consumer-generated pictures and posts as well. This will become a start to a better relationship with a bigger audience. Lastly, in order to establish a solid relationship, the Federal Coffee Palace needs to be honest with their consumers, because then they would be able to receive positive word of mouth, which is essential, especially in this industry.